Hello and welcome to Who's On Next, the podcast that just happens. It just happens. Today I have with me a man who's had an extensive voiceover history in video games, animation, all across the UK. It is Marc Silk.
Hello. You have the best intros in shows. It just happens.
No, I try to change it every time. But the problem is that it's becoming very hard to come up with new taglines.
I've noticed. What was your apples one? It was, and green means apples. It was something like that. It was good.
I forget. I think it was like red means stop and green. I think it was red means stop, green means apples, something like that.
That's it. You really should listen to your show. It's quite good. Well, nice to chat. Thank you for getting in touch.
Yeah, no, you are the first UK-based voice actor I've actually interviewed before, so
I feel special now.
I've interviewed one person from the UK before, but they were a YouTube friend of mine, and
that clearly doesn't count. I definitely get more cool points. Maybe I don't. Maybe a YouTube friend does get more cool points.
He does have around 2-3 million subscribers.
Yeah, okay, you win. It's not a competition, but you win.
I guess, where did you get your start in doing voiceover work?
That was in radio, because I did like internship work placement at a radio station in the city here, because I always my fascination was always the behind the scenes world. So my heroes were always the people behind the scenes, the engineers, the special effects guys, the sound designers, the voice actors, all of that. So on work placement in the internship, basically my duties were to file vinyl away in the record library, but then I'd sneak into studios and watch and learn how they did it, and I'd see the voice guys there and you go, oh my god, that's what they look like. And then I learned from watching people who I thought were brilliant, so I taught myself how to be a producer, a director. And then my first voice work was really doing little bits for myself, because there was no one else around to do it, so I taught myself how to. My heroes were people like Jim Henson and Don Messick and Doris Butler and Mel Blanc and June Foray and people over here and Robin Williams, and there's a great UK guy called Kenny Everett and Monty Python, and yourself, it's this big melting pot of influences, and when you're directed in the right place, you sort of rinse the sponge out of all these influences, and you sort of find yourself. And so my first voice work was really working on my own bits. But I did a radio show for a few years. And then a national TV station that at the time was based in the UK called Central TV. They did children's ITV. And so it was all the cartoons, it was all the big stuff. And it was all the continuity, the voice between the shows came from literally 10 minutes away from that radio station. And the guy that normally did it was taking a 2-week break. And they'd heard my bits of work and liked it, because, again, it wasn't just regular voice work. Because normally you'd hear, come to the carpet shop. They sell carpets. Bob's Butchers. That kind of thing. And I was doing stuff more influenced by, like, Warner Brothers cartoons and Muppets and larger-than-life stuff. And they asked me to, like, go and stand in for this guy, which was huge for me, because it wasn't just this is coming up next. The guy, that role, you were almost the DJ, the host of that afternoon strand of cartoons, or that afternoon strand of kids TV, CITV, children's ITV. And the response I got was incredible, and I was so grateful, because I did it slightly differently. I did what I thought was the right thing to do. So normally what would happen is you'd see the video play of, say, a clip from Sylvester and Tweety that was coming up next.
Yeah.
So normally you'd hear the guy go, coming up next, it's a Sylvester and Tweety Mysteries. Now, next on CITV. What I did, I got hold of the video, and I came in early each day, and I looked at the lip flaps of what Sylvester was saying, and I wrote script to fit those lip flaps, and then I dubbed it live on
Wow.
TV. I said, coming up next, and no, I know what I did. Yeah, you saw the logo saying coming up next. Then you saw Sylvester, and I'd already written and rehearsed this. So on live national TV, I'm going, Fluffer and Fluckatage, coming up next on CITV, the Sylvester and Tweety Mysteries. Woohoo! And the end of, and I was doing stuff like that, for this whole first day. Anyway, at the end of the day, the end of the first day, in this booth, the booth that when that mic fader is open, you are going national across the whole of the UK. There was a phone, an old school corded phone in the corner of this audio booth. It was a red phone with a red light, and it basically meant if that light lit up, you have to answer it because it was something really serious, like the Queen had died, or something big that you had to be aware of. 30 seconds before my final link, my final piece of speech on live national TV, on my very first national TV thing. So the commercials are on, the clock is counting down, I have 30 seconds, and this bat phone lights up. I'm thinking, oh my God, what the hell? And I pick it up, and the guy goes, hello, is that the guy in the voice booth? And I said, yeah. He said, hello, I used to work I used to run the place that you're at right now. I now work at Disney in the UK. Will you come and work for us, please? And I said, give me 10 seconds. I've just got to do this link. So I go, 3, 2, 1. Thanks for watching. See you again tomorrow on CITV. Yes. I mean, what a roller coaster. It was so exciting. It was such a thrill. But my God. So I went from the first day of doing TV to being offered a gig at Disney. And then for 2 years, it was my voice that you heard saying things like, the magical world of Disney, all that kind of stuff. So I was that guy, and I did loads of promos and movie trailers and stuff for the Disney theme parks. And when you used to get the DVDs or the VHSs of the amazing things that will be happening at Disney if you go on holiday, if you go on vacation, I was the voice in all those things. It led to so many spin-offs. But yeah, that was the first thing I did.
Oh, I remember because I was going through YouTube because I was watching like old VHS openings of old Disney VHS tapes because I had a bunch of them as a kid, and I found one and it was UK based and it was like completely different, and I was like, I didn't even know they did re-record all this stuff or recorded new stuff for the different like English speaking territories.
I did stuff for years for them. It was great. And I loved it too, because first of all, of course, it's great because it's a job. But I didn't get into this for it to be a job. I got into this because I really love it. This is what I love. These are who my heroes are, and I treasure the time that I get to be working with these people, and to be part of something that I grew up completely adoring. And so to be that voice of those Disney things was a thrill. I really enjoyed it, and that still goes to what I do now. But I grew up being massively inspired by all those, Warner and Disney and all of that. And it's funny because to me, Disney was always beautiful. I mean, as their movies were beautiful, but Warner, Warner's shorts were edgy.
Oh no, I am a colossal. I own, I think, like every Looney Tunes Golden Collection set. Like I am a massive, massive Looney Tunes fan. That's like one of my favorite things.
You look at the voice talent they had there. Mel Blanc's the headline, and then you got June Foray and Stan Freberg.
Stan
and all these
Freberg was amazing.
Yeah, and then you look at Chuck Jones and Tex Avery and Bob McKimson and all of that gang. I mean, actually, I have original artwork in this room right now there's an original Virgil Ross there. There's an original animation cell there from Box Office Bunny, which was the first Warner short they'd done for decades in the 90s. There's an original cell. Can we pan over, please? Over here, just over here. Actually, can I show you this? I can show you this. This will sound great hearing people look at stuff. Over here is an original Chuck Jones Bugs Bunny sketch.
Oh my God.
Yeah, that there, and that's signed by Mel Blanc.
I think like one of my favorite things I have is I have a few things. I have a Japanese cell because there was a Japanese exclusive Transformers anime that never left Japan, and I have a cell from
right.
that of Optimus.
That's cool. Oh, cool.
I have an original pencil sketch. Well, before they inked and painted from the first season of SpongeBob. Of Mr. Krabs. It's from one of my favorite episodes, the one where they're looking for the Flying Dutchman's treasure with the board game.
Yeah, yeah.
But my favorite thing is I have a framed, again, before they inked and painted, it's Skeletor from the original He-Man. Wow. And I got Alan Oppenheimer to sign it at a convention a couple years ago. And it was so big, I couldn't put it in a folder, because originally I was going to put it in a folder, and I forgot the paper. It was like unique, so it was much larger than a normal piece of paper. So I had to actually use my big hardback Warner Brothers art book to hold. I had to hold it because it was just big enough to hold the whole paper.
Well, over there, I've got like you said, on original, the animation paper, the punch hold animation paper.
Yeah.
I'm going to try and show you from here because you won't see it particularly well on an audio recording. But there's a huge iconic show in the UK called Danger Mouse.
Yeah.
And I've got a lot of original animation art from Danger Mouse. And my very first animation show that I worked on was with Cosgrove Hall, who created Danger Mouse.
Oh my God.
Well, for me, again, I got so much admiration for what that team and the animators and the artists, all these people, what they achieved. I've collected so much art of Cosgrove Hall from the moment I was still at school, and the first time I went down to London, I found an animation art gallery, and I managed to buy a piece of Cosgrove Hall animation art for £50.
Oh, I got that. Yeah, I got that Mr. Krabs for $50.
It's changed a bit now, but what I did, I did two audience with Cosgrove and Hall. In theatres, so they didn't normally give interviews, but they trusted me, which I was very proud of, and so I was the host of these audience with Cosgrove Hall. There was different animation festivals, and in the meal that we had before the talk on stage, I take with me a whole bunch of a big suitcase full of animation art, and they signed all of it for me. And see that there, this piece of furniture.
Yeah.
We can guess what's in that.
I'm assuming
animation
a lot of animation cells or animation.
Yes.
Like, is it just pencil sketches?
Pencils, animation art, backgrounds, concept art. I've got right back from Tex Avery to there's my favorite. Well, one of my favorite pieces is in another room back there, and it's original. It's a Frank Thomas original blue pencil sketch of Baloo, one of the originals from the Jungle Book.
Oh my God! So it like screen used, or was it like pre-concept? Was it like before actually like?
Yeah, well, it was screen used. Well, it would have been then drawn over for cell, which would then been inked and painted.
Well, yeah, I didn't know if it was like something used for the film or it was like concept.
Yes,
art, is what I was saying.
Yeah, it was used for the film. Yeah, and it's beautiful. And what's again. You can learn so much, even from for what I'm doing with the voice side of work, by watching what the animators and the artists do, or musicians do. Because in terms of the simplicity, or the rhythms, or where they're putting weight on certain moments for that movement, And this thing of Baloo, there's not a lot of pencil lines in this. But God, the weight and the expression and the feeling of joy within Baloo, just looking at this very straightforward pencil sketch. It just shows what incredible character, artists, and even from the animation side, performers they were. Frank and Ollie were great. Have you seen the documentary, Frank?
Oh, yeah. I watched it on Disney Plus.
It's a great documentary. The fact they live next door.
Yeah, one of my favorite little facts I remember learning was about Milt Kahl, because he had this little thing he would do when he would animate the milk call head wiggle, where like when a character would speak, they'd like wiggle their head back and forth when they would say something. And I remember reading a thing talking about how a lot of the times a character would be doing something when they would do that. Like they'd be like moving their hand or they'd be like shaking something. And they had talked about how you realize he did that as a flex because that is insanely hard to do, to have to animate. Because it was someone explaining he had to lip sync while moving the head and moving the hand at the same time, which in animation back then was like basically a huge flex to say he could do that.
This is all frame by frame, 24 frames a second in pencil, and he made that happen.
And they were talking about how he would do that basically to show how good he was. Like it was just basically him saying, here's how good I am, let me animate this. And it became a signature in like every movie he worked on. I love it when you hear there's little moments that can be either little moments but end up being big things, even down to like, do you know the story of how they got the voice of Roadrunner, just that sound effect? It was Paul Julian, if I recall.
Exactly.
It was, he was an inker or something. I forget what he was. He was a storyboard guy.
Racing down the corridor.
Yeah, and they heard he would make this noise around Termite Terrace. He would like to make that noise.
So watching to this right now, if you get a chance to watch an interview with Chuck Jones telling this story, it's worth it. Because quite simply, Paul Julian was racing down the corridor with a stack of cells, a stack of art mounted up and holding them, and running down the corridor going, meep, 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 meep. Chuck Jones went, yep, that's it. And it's that same meep meep recording they've used for everything.
It's the same every time. He's been dead for like 40 years, and it's still the same recording. Yep.
And if there was anyone else doing that, it wouldn't work. It has to be that one recording. I don't know, there's little bits of magic that matter. You know, when you're creating a character from whether it's the art side, from the art side, the music, the voice acting. Everything goes into creating that performance. And those little moments you saying about the guy with the flex.
Yeah, Milk Call.
Yep. With Milt's little wiggle flex. I loved it. When watching the documentary when I was at school of Richard Williams, there was a great documentary on UK TV called I Drew Roger Rabbit. And it's only about a half hour, but it takes you through his process of creating that movie. And what I loved was he wanted to take it to the next step, because up until that point, you've got beautiful examples of live action mixed with animation, like Mary Poppins or Bedknobs and Broomsticks, or Jerry Mouse dancing with Gene Kelly, and it was always with a locked off camera. And he wanted to take it to a new level where basically you can swing the camera all over the place, to make it more real, to make it live. And again, in terms of a flex, in terms of taking it into a place where you go, well, that's going to be hard. He did it.
They went over budget, I think, like twice on that movie. Like it's insane. You look at the production levels of I think one of my favorites is there's like two bits in that movie where I always think about how as like a regular viewer you don't think about it, but from an animator perspective you realize how nightmarishly hard this would have been. And I think it's one of them is when Eddie is talking about when his brother dies, and it's like when they're in the theater and they slowly zoom in on Bob Hoskins. Roger's moving the whole time. He's barely moving, but he's moving that you can tell he's like a living character. So it's like that poor animator having to end 300 frames of animation of Roger not saying anything as the camera slowly zooms in.
300 frames a second.
Yeah. And the other one is when they're in, what is it? The behind the wall of the bar. Like when Judge Doom first comes in the bar and they're hiding Roger. There's that. They did it. I swear they did it on purpose. There's this little light fixture that's moving back and forth, and Roger keeps is under the light, so the light
There's the shadow.
Yeah, the shadow keeps moving, and
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, it's
amazing.
like,
Well, and you look at, again, as a fan of animation, or just a fan of special effects, or a fan of brilliance, engineering, construction, puppetry, all of that, it's worth watching this Making of Roger Rabbit, because when you see them in that bar, and basically it's a puppet show. It's like watching the Muppets, a Muppet show being recorded, where you've got all these puppeteers underneath holding plates, moving things. Piano keys, a piano rigged to play by itself, and then Daffy Duck is then, and Daffy and Donald are then, animated on top of those moving keys, and it was stunning, absolutely amazing. And that again, for me as a fan of animation, anyone that's a true fan of that genre, the kick that we got out of seeing, seeing and hearing Mel Blanc. And you got Mel Blanc and Tony Anselmo doing Daffy. So you got Mel doing Daffy, Tony doing Donald, Mae Questel as Betty Boop. So the original actress from Betty Boop doing that for Roger Rabbit. She was in her 80s, and she's still doing it, and it sounded incredible.
The fact she still sounded as good as she did that old was just so amazing to me in that movie.
Oh yeah. There's a lovely clip where she does the voice to camera, and she goes, "I still got it, Eddie." Boop 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 boop. I just love. And then you see Mel Blanc, who at that point was, he was a larger gentleman, and he's kind of, you could see it's in his later years. And
I think that was the year before he died, or like several months before he died.
Oh yeah, it's a heartbreaking story of what happened. Yeah, but when you watch him just in front of that microphone, and it's just effortless. The last time I worked with someone with a speech impediment. But,
have you ever heard the story that Bob Bergen told when he met Mel Blanc?
Which one? I've heard a number of Bob Bergen stories.
Yeah, the one where he was like, I think it was like an 84, 85, and he like crashed in a recording session, and he had like said he was a friend of the family or something.
Oh
like
that. Yeah. So he got it. Yeah.
Yeah, and he had said like Mel Blanc was on oxygen at the time, and he was still able to do the characters like perfectly at that time.
Yeah. Well, and that's what we do. You just keep on going. But he was so good. There's a guy, getting really in the weeds here. A guy that I was a huge fan of, and I still love now, was a British radio guy called Kenny Everett. Now you okay, honey? That's my little dog sneezing. Honey, you okay? I can hear you sneezing. Okay. Mwah. Kiss. Kiss. Okay now? Got the sniffles. Yeah, so huge fan of this guy in the UK called Kenny Everett. I grew up watching his shows. I discovered him through TV. He did TV sketch shows. But he was really a radio guy. He was both. He could do anything. He was also a brilliant producer. And he was like Robin Williams on the radio, but he was also he was an incredible. He had a real talent for production. He could sing. He was the guy that actually broke Bohemian Rhapsody on the radio. He's the guy that's responsible for that being played. Anyway, Kenny Everett used to do play a soap opera that he created, produced, did all the voices himself. Little sort of like 2-3 minute soap opera. And it was called Captain Kremen, and there's so many things that join together at this point. So the TV version of this was the first thing animated for TV on a regular basis by Cosgrove Hall, who did Danger Mouse. So they did the animation for that, but Kenny Everett on the radio, he used to subscribe to a production service for his radio show from Noel Blanc. So they used to do a thing called Mel Blanc's Blankety Blanks. and it was recorded. It was a production thing full of sketches and voicey bits that were recorded by Mel Blanc and other voices around the animation world at that time, like Gary Owens. He was on them too. And you'd have things like fake commercials. And like in Roadrunner, the fake industry is Acme.
Yeah.
So it's Acme in Roadrunner. Well, in these fake commercials, it was new from Kremen Industries. Kremen Industries. And Kenny lifted that name Kremen, and that's what he used for the title of Captain Kremen. Oh. So there's all these weird things that like come together. Gary Owens from Rona Martin's Laughing, who was the narrator for The Perils of Penelope Pit Stop.
Space Ghost.
And Space Ghost. I know, yeah. Live from we'll save you, Penelope. It's all this stuff. And then live from beautiful downtown Burbank. All this stuff. And so I'm just a kid in the UK, and my friends have been influenced by footballers, and I'm getting influenced by Gary Owens, Burbank, and so all these influences. It's incredible how they all tie together. So Gary Owens, Mel Blanc, Noel Blanc, Kenny Everett, Queen. Queen, I grew up with Queen as my favorite band as a kid. In fact, I got to see Queen live, and it turned out to be the last show with Freddie Mercury.
When? Because I forget, did he left the band at some point, and I think he came back, and then I think he left again. And
Freddie?
Yeah.
No, well, Freddie was... what the hell was that? Hang on, excuse me. Oh, the discretion. It's so impressive. Queen were always together. There was always talk of splitting up. They were always together. Freddie went off to do a solo project. John Deacon went off to do a solo project. They all went off to do their own solo projects, but they were always officially together.
Well, yeah, because I meant more like Freddie, because I knew Freddie had done a lot of solo stuff over like a period.
He'd done Mr. Bad Guy, the solo album, and he'd done a thing called Time, which was a musical for Dave Clark. He'd done a bunch of stuff, the Great Pretender. Freddie had done loads of stuff. And Brian May, Brian May did the Starfleet project, amongst other things, with Eddie Van Halen. So you were saying about manga and all that kind of from the Japanese side of this world. There was a show called Terrorhawks in the UK, which was a big sci-fi show. And that was created by Jerry Anderson, who I can tell you more about in a bit. He's the guy that was behind Thunderbirds and Stingray. Well, at the same time as that show was on, another show got shown on the TV over here on like Saturday mornings, big kids TV time, called Starfleet. And it was from Japan, but it had a much more sort of Japanese manga-ish quality to it. But Brian May ended up doing this special version of the theme tune with Van Halen.
With that wow. That's a collaboration.
Yeah, it's astonishing. And they basically just got into the studio. It was him and Van Halen and some other stunning session musicians. And they did this, they just jammed for a couple of days. And in fact, they re-released it recently, they released everything. All the outtakes, everything. And I bought the whole thing on vinyl. And oh my God, it sounds incredible. So there's, on the B side of Starfleet, the theme tune, was it called Blues Breaker? And you hear a guitar string break in the middle of it.
Oh my God.
And they just keep it in. It's like ka-dang, dang, ka-dang, bring, ka-dang, ka-dang, ka-dang. But it's funny how these connections happen. So I'm a huge Queen fan and a huge Billy Joel fan. And even down to there's an animation show that I work on called Rory the Racing Car. That's from a little while ago, and I play a bunch of characters on that.
That was stop motion, wasn't it?
Yes, it was. Oh my God, you know your stuff. Of course, you know
your
stuff.
I actually, the reason I actually know that is I saw a thing trending a while back on Twitter. Peter Kay had done a thing, I guess like 15 something years ago, with like this big crossover animation short with all these different shows in the UK.
I'm in
And
it.
I was looking at the cast list and saw you were listed in there because I looked at the whole thing because I was wondering, because I knew some of them because we got some of those shows, but a lot of them we didn't. And some of them, and I was like looking in because I was curious to see what a lot of these shows were, because a lot of them were stop motion, and I'm a very big stop motion fan, and I like dug through and looked at what a lot of these shows were that I hadn't seen.
That was for a thing over here called Comic Relief. The American one was been going for ages as well. But Peter Kay and myself, we worked together on this project called Rory the Racing Car, and we're both huge Billy Joel fans. Now, Peter's a big deal over here. I mean, he fills arenas.
Yeah, I know. I watched a video talking about how, didn't he like just do a comeback tour not too long ago, something like that?
He's still doing one. Yeah. In fact, he got in touch with me last week, and we're probably going to meet up to go and say hello again for the first time in a good while. It'd be so nice to see him again. But basically, so we both love Billy Joel. Right, he's a huge Billy Joel fan, and so he invited me to go and see Billy Joel with him. So this one day we were recording Rory the Racing Car, and it'd been a long day. You know, the animation sessions are generally they can be exhausting because it's like it's a full. If you imagine doing a theatre show but all day, you know, there's a lot of energy involved. So I wouldn't change it for anything. It's the best thing in the world, but. This that. So we'd had a really great long day recording, and then we were picked up by a friend of his, and then we're driven to the backstage entrance. But the car pulled up, you know, where all the tour buses were, and we were dropped off there. And it's very rare I turn to jelly, but the band were lined up on the ramp outside. And it's one of those things where you kind of go, you've got a lifetime of thoughts that you want to say to them, you know, because it's like, oh my God, it's you. Thank you for being in my life. It's all this stuff. And of course, you don't say that, but there's a lifetime of, there are certain people, performers, bands, whatever it might be, that played a really important moment in your life, or whatever point that, you know, whatever it was, a piece of music, a movie, TV show. And it was that. So anyway, we walk up, and he got to know them because he'd been to so many of these shows, and I was introduced, and then we had dinner before the show, which was amazing. And then we were led. The lights went down. We were led to our seats because the previous week in Birmingham, near where I live here. He took his seat just before, about 10 minutes before the show started, while the lights were up. And of course, he's so popular. He's the kind of, he fills that arena himself. So I was in the audience, and you see about 10 minutes before the show starts, like hundreds of people swarming towards the bottom left of the arena. And all the security guards having to put barriers up and stop people moving. And you think, what the hell's going on? And it was because he was taking his seat. He's just so loved over here. And so anyway, we went to see the show, and then we were led to our seats just before the show was about to start. And we had better seats than Cameron Diaz. And it's one of those moments where you go, how has this happened? And then in the end, you go, actually, it's two friends watching Billy Joel. And that's what it was. And we just had a fantastic night. And then we scooped off just before the last song finished. And everybody had to stand with their back to the wall so that the performers on stage, literally, as soon as the last note played, the applause started. They ran off backstage, straight into the bus. Bus goes straight out the building, and while the applause is still going, they gone. And you go, brilliant, because if they hadn't done that, they wouldn't have been able to move in traffic, you know.
Yeah.
But that was very exciting. But yeah, this Rory was such a fantastic show to work on. And again, in terms of like legendary cast, iconic cast. So Peter's a star in his own right, but then the narrator was Sterling Moss, the racing driver legend. And then there was another guy that would come and do cameo appearances every now and again called Murray Walker. And he's a really famous, iconic British racing commentator. And just to have these characters like hanging around the studio, it was a pleasure, just to be with them.
Yeah, because this actually kind of brings me to my next point, because I was always curious about this, because I noticed this with Rory and a couple other things you've worked on, is that when they come to the United States, sometimes they'll redub some characters, not all. Sometimes they'll redub the whole cast, or they'll redub some actors with either American actors or Canadian actors, and I've always wondered like what the whole reason behind that is with that kind of stuff.
Well, I'm second guessing here, but I've been part of that redubbing a number of times, and I'm guessing that as a parent deciding what you put your kid in front of, or even the kid themselves, there is something potentially more endearing about hearing it in your native accent. Or, if there's a show like Bob the Builder over here.
Yeah, because Bob here, when we got it, because we didn't get Bob the Builder until like 2001, I think. Yeah. And Greg Proops did it in the States.
Well, there were three voices for Bob.
Yeah.
There was Bill DeFries, so Bill Duffy. He was the first voice. Then it was Greg Proops. And then Greg left the show. And then I became the voice of Bob the Builder. So I was the voice of Bob for, it was nearly 10 years. And that was huge. It was a big deal. Because over here, it was an English comedy actor called Neil Morrissey. So he was Bob over here. And then, again, for when he went to America, had you ever thought of it being dubbed at all? Or did you just accept it as that's Bob?
Yeah, well, because it's I learned in the UK they do a similar thing where sometimes they dub over like American celebrities with British celebrities in like animated movies. Because I learned they do that too, and you don't know that because it's localized to your region, so you don't think about it really.
Well, I suppose an example would be as a way of having, when you're doing promotion for movies around the world, if you've, say, got Stephen Colbert doing a cameo, or Jimmy Kimmel, or whoever it might be in a movie, they can go and, it's a great thing for them to be able to publicize on their show. So it's probably like a smaller character they can like slot in. But
it's usually like a 1-4 line character. Because I know in Cars, Jeremy Piven played him in the States, and there was a character, it's Lightning McQueen's agent in the first Cars movie, who only has like 2 scenes. And in the UK, it's Jeremy Clarkson who does it.
Yes.
Which is funny because he's known here. So I find it funny that they didn't just have him do both.
That's funny,
Yeah.
Well, I suppose one of the reasons too is you kind of go is who's available for the chat show. It's things like that, those little details. But so for over here, it was Neil Morrissey who was in the show Men Behaving Badly over here, and a few other well-known, well-loved shows in the UK. And then when Bob came to the States, he got Bill DeFries for the first season or so. Then Greg Proops, who I loved on TV as I used to watch him all the time when I was at school on Whose Line Is It Anyway?
Yeah, because I know he was one of the he did both. He did the UK and the US version for Whose Line.
Yes, he did, and so I got a lot of time for Greg. And then when they were looking to move, Greg left and they were recasting Bob, I was working on Pingu for the UK. So the penguin, stop motion penguin, who all that stuff.
Yeah.
So I was I was also the narrator for Pingu. So you heard, we did a whole, because there was the original Pingu, in the 80s, 90s stop motion. And then they did about another, I don't know, 100 Pingus. It must have been. It was a lot, animated by the same people who did Bob the Builder and a lot of animators that worked on Cosgrove stuff. So I'd been working on Pingu, it was like, hello, Pingu. What's that, Pingu? You did what? In an igloo? Oh, Pingu. Things like that. Very, very lovely, bedtime story voice. Hello, I'm a friend of Pingu, that guy. And then they asked me if I'd go and just spend a bit of time for this character, Bob the Builder. And they said, if you were going to be the voice of a builder named Bob for America, how would that sound? And I said, well, how about like hey guys, come on, you got to build that bridge. I'm not made of cash. You need rules, hustle. And they laughed and said, well, maybe something less angry. So I said, how about, hi, today we're going to build a house. They said, maybe somewhere in the middle. And I said, well, hi, Bob the Builder here. Can we fix it? Yes, we can. Come on, Scoop, Mug, Dizzy, let's go. Today we're going to teach you how to build a concrete bridge, which is a real practical skill for a 5-year-old, right? And then they went, yeah, are you available next week? And we literally started there and then. And it lasted for a long time. And like you were saying, you're a big fan of stop motion animation. I am too. And so forget work just for a second. I would love going to the studio sets, just watching the animators work and seeing the sets and the costume makers and for Pingu, the penguin, all the different replacement heads for all the different vowel sounds that he made. And same with, Bob, just to actually go on I started Bob when it was still stop motion animation.
Yeah, I saw they CG'd it, I think, like 7 years ago, something like that.
Yeah, so to have they completely changed what Bob looked like. I left before them, and so that was the end. I left at the end of the classic Bob run, so when he still looked like Bob, classic original Bob the Builder, and so I was just I was so happy that I got to work on him in the stop motion years, but also move into the CGI side of things because it's just how it was going to go to keep it moving, and actually to begin with. The original test they did for Bob in CGI, it was very faithful to the stop motion.
So it was in model, or it was on model, basically, to how it looked originally.
Yeah, and then like with everything, it sort of organically, bit by bit, moves and becomes its own thing. And then they completely changed it years after. But we did a lot of recording of Bob, and there was back in, what would it be, 2000 and whatever it was? No, hang on, 2009 maybe. I took my mom out to New York with me, and we went to the head office of Hit, I guess, Entertainment in New York, and to the head office of Bob the Builder. And I was just, because I wanted her to see what I see, and it was great sharing that with her. And what I hadn't thought of was, I was really excited to be there because I'm still a fan. I am, and we both are clearly. So I was excited to be there because I love seeing the process of this come together. But the thing that I hadn't thought of is they're excited that I was going because it's Bob. It's the voice of Bob the Builder there. And they were so generous with their time and the tour they gave us around the whole building, and even down to going on the rooftop office that looked out onto the Empire State Building. And was it the Empire State or Chrysler? I think it would have been the Empire State. You go, what a place to have meetings. It was a very exciting thing to be part of. And, and it keeps on, there's other nice things that kind of keep on happening, it's a pleasure.
Well, I think because another thing I was curious about, because they also did the redubbing, because you did the Ape Escape games, at least past the first one. You did pretty much all the Ape Escape games after the first one.
Yeah. And
that was another one where they redubbed the whole cast, but in the UK, which was another thing I was always very interested in that I've always just found it so fascinating when I see them do that with some games where it's like specifically for a UK audience or an American audience, they'll just redub the whole game, which I find
I was very grateful for that.
Yeah, because you were the villain, I believe, Spectre primarily.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. And there's and Medieval 2. Well, I said Daniel Fortescue, and there was I had a friend yesterday get in touch saying, he said, "Are you in Everybody's Golf?" He's playing Everybody's Golf. Is this you? I'm one of the original PlayStation titles. I went, yeah, it's me. Yeah. And because I was and still am a big gaming fan. So I grew up with I had all the consoles pretty much over time. So I started out here with the first console. Well, hang on. What was your first games console? What was the first one you had?
Well, are we counting handheld or like in the TV?
Anything.
First one I had, I was 3, was a Game Boy Color.
Oh my God. Okay, let me date myself. So the first one I had was a Sega Master System.
Well, technically it was also a Genesis because I had a CD-ROM with a shit ton of Genesis games on it.
Yeah. Okay.
And it was legal. It was legal. It wasn't like a burned disc with like 30 games on it. It was a legal, released by Sega CD. It had like 20 games on it.
Sounds a bit defensive there. I had a Genesis. It was completely legal. What was your first console? Mine was completely legal. Nothing strange going on. Seriously.
It was called like Sega Smash Pack, like Volume 2, I think is what it was called.
That sounds completely legal. Yes, it's the Sega Best of Sega, including all your favorite Atari hits. Yes, Sega's greatest hits featuring Paperboy, Asteroids, and Whoops, I Gotta Go.
So as you were saying with the Master System. Well, there's a guy I follow on YouTube who's actually from the UK, and he talked about how I guess Sega was way bigger in the UK than Nintendo was for a period of time.
Huge. Oh yeah, it was. Yeah, the only thing, it was Sega, the Nintendo the Nintendo didn't really make a mark over here until it got to Nintendo 64, and that just kind of then demolished things. Well, no, that's not completely true. It just opened it up to a whole new audience. So it was Sega. So the Sega Mega Drive, the Sega Master System, Sega Mega Drive, and then there's things like the Mega CD, and then there was the Dreamcast and the Saturn and all these. And I had all these consoles. Plus I had PCs and all the other gaming bits and pieces that you'd have to play these games on. And then it started growing with PlayStation was a big game changer, and then Nintendo 64. That was just in terms of quality of graphics, that changed so much, and it was like playing it was like playing an animation. It was like playing a cartoon at that time. So you look at what they did, because Rare, who did Donkey Kong for the N64, they're literally 30 minutes down the road from here. Although they were based in Twycross.
Yeah.
And that was a very exciting time in gaming, because every year or so you felt like you were seeing something that you'd never experienced before. And to be part of that is it's almost like AI now. You look at what's happening with AI now, and it's like literally every sort of month or so you go, it's doing what to text? I just type it in and it does that.
Yeah.
This is so early on, but that's how it felt then. And of course we had the bedroom coders side of gaming in the UK as well. So for things like there was the Spectrum computer, the ZX Spectrum, and then there was the BBC Micro, Commodore 64, all these computers that a lot of these games were often written in people's bedrooms. There's a documentary called From Bedrooms to Billions, and that was a big movement. And then when Sega and Sony and Microsoft came in, that all went, and it turned into movie grade budgets. But I was over the moon that I got to be in a Nintendo 64 game, because the thing of when it's on a cartridge, you're committed for life.
Yeah.
And Because now, if a game's released, you can just put a patch, you can update it, you can change things. We're used to that way of working now. But when it was a cartridge, that's it. Nothing can change. That's how it was. And I was in a Nintendo 64 game called Fighter's Destiny. And I was just thrilled to be in that because it felt proper. There's certain things where you feel you've arrived. And that was one of those moments. You go, I'd done quite a few games already, but that's one of those where you go, yeah, I'm part of this now. And but it was only cartridge. So the bandwidth and the available memory was so little. Literally, it had enough it had enough space for me to go, player 1, fight. Player 2, fight. Game over. And not much else.
Well, yeah, N64, you could barely have more than like 20 lines of dialogue. Well, that was like the genius thing with Rare, is that a lot of their banjo and that, they were smart and just made it good. Like they didn't record like whole lines of dialogue, which always impressed me with Conquer, which I guess maybe it's because Conquer's Bad Fur Day was so late, but that's like probably the most dialogue-rich game on the N64.
It was extremely clever use of the limited bandwidth they had. But there were some people doing some real magic with what you could compress into those cartridges. Every now and then you'd hear of, was it Zelda, where there was a cartridge that was about 3 feet tall? They packed all this other stuff in it. It was
what was it? I know that they would have to have the expansion packs to because I know
expansion packs.
Yeah. I'm pushing 30 and I feel old saying the word expansion pack for a cartridge right now.
The equivalent today would be having to link a car battery up to your iPhone. And wheel it around on a trolley. That's the equivalent. Yeah, and then for power you pedal it. It was literally that kind of state of the art. But I was so fortunate over here where every month or so I was recording a new big title. So I recorded a lot of new PlayStation games when PlayStation became a new thing. And then that kind of games work, I've been very fortunate that I've worked on some really big games. That was a high one. Really big games. There was a fantastic game called Black and White, which was one of the first big, almost like God. You become a god yourself, kind of thing. So you could explore your own. This world was just so big, whereas before it was platform games and shoot 'em ups and Doom and things. But this is the first game of its kind where you could really explore, and the decisions you made, whether you got to play good or evil, and depending on what the decisions you made, that had a huge impact in the rest of the game. It was groundbreaking, and it was Peter Molyneux's company Lionhead.
Okay.
And that was a big deal back then. So I was going down to their studio every few months, on this super secret thing, and working with them there. And then on the very last week of recording, we went down to Electronic Arts EA Studios headquarters in Chertsey, in the UK here. And oh my God, it was like something from a Bond movie. This game studio, you went into like this forest. I think, where the hell are we going? And then this car drives me to around this lovely sort of lake, and then there's this building, and the whole front of it is glass. It's like a Bond villain's lair, and the whole thing was glass. And then there were these like sort of track things to the left and to the right, and what they could do during the summer, the front of the building would open up. Like the glass would go, would open up like these, patio doors, and but for the last week of recording for Black and White, I was based down there for a week, and it was just, you felt like you're part of something. It was such a big deal, and the response to that was amazing. We did a few sequels as well, and there's another great game with great dialogue was called Overlord by Codemasters. And the writer for that, who became a good mate, is Rhianna Pratchett. And, she had a very famous father writer. And, so her dad was Terry Pratchett.
I was going to say Terry Pratchett?
Yeah. So Rhee's dad was Terry Pratchett, and she's a prolific writer in her own right. And we had the most fun recording sessions because she wrote all the dialogue for these games, Overlord. And I played a stack of characters in that. You go like, no, the Minion Master, evil will always find a way, all this kind of stuff. And and it was, again, just like you feel you're like you're doing something that really mattered. And I just loved meeting all the coders, and they had a great canteen there at Codemasters, and you always had decent food in the canteen, but they also had these was it Daytona? I don't think it was Daytona, but it was that kind of multiplayer racing game in the canteen that you could just sit and just play for free.
Need for Speed, like one of those kind of games.
Yeah, one of those, yeah. And Daytona, what a great arcade game. Sega again. Oh my God, we lived the dream. And then in the video game department, I was also always a huge fan of pinball machines in arcades. So anytime my folks would take us down to the seaside for our holiday in England, on the seaside, the beachfront arcades there was always pinball machines. And I remember my favorite pinball machine at the time is probably one of the most derided pinball machines of all time, which was a Bugs Bunny pinball machine. It was Bugs Bunny's birthday. Was it birthday ball, birthday bash,
birthday blowout?
Well, yeah.
Well, there was an NES game called Birthday Blowout, Bugs Bunny Birthday Blowout.
God, I should know this. Bugs Bunny's Birthday Ball. Yeah, it was released by Midway under the Bally name, and I loved it, absolutely loved it. And the reason was, it was because that was the only place in the world where you could hear those Mel Blanc bits of audio. I assume it was audio taken from shorts. I assume it wasn't like they had him record for it, because I know they sometimes do get the actors to record for those things. I think they might have done, because he was still recording custom stuff for different bits and pieces, so it wouldn't surprise me if they'd have recorded a few extra little bits.
I remember one of my favorites was because Midway were the ones that made like every pinball machine ever, like every
Midway, yeah, exactly, yeah. So, but you go ahead.
Yeah, I remember like one of my favorite stories was because the guys who made Mortal Kombat worked on pinball machines because they worked at Midway, and when they were making Mortal Kombat, the dude who did the announcer in Shao Kahn was like he's still alive. He's like a big pinball designer, and they heard his voice and they were like, "Hey, you have a great voice. Do you want to be the announcer for our game?" And he was like, "Okay." He was like, "Okay," and he had like never done voice work outside of a couple pinball machines.
That's fantastic.
Yeah,
that's fantastic. Yeah, here we are. Yeah, the guy who did Shao Kahn's voice used to work making pinball machines. Yeah, Well, so I went from being a big fan of these machines, and I've nearly bought this machine a number of times. I've nearly bought a used Bugs Bunny pinball machine a number of times because I fell in love with it in the arcade because of hearing Mel Blanc's voice. And I just know that if I got it, I'd be so frustrated because it's supposed to be a terrible game. I don't know, you can restore it, but you go, well, just buy a good game and just enjoy the memory. But but then, of course, all the arcades and places that you would play those kind of games and have those creative experiences, these great designs, they went. So when all the arcades shut down because of the games console, popularity, why go to what we're turning into dingy arcades when you could play it all at home, with your friends there? So of course, these huge, kitchen table size pinball machines, they all disappeared or got put in dumpsters. The clever people collected them. I know people that bought games that, like Addams Family, which was the biggest selling pinball machine of all time, or say Twilight Zone, things like that, for literally $300-$500, and now they'd be worth, well, like, $10,000, $12,000. So, and then others were just, junked. But there's luckily a lot survived. And then with the advent of barcades, now you see a lot of these classic games that have come back. And so I fell in love again with pinball back in what would it be, about 8 years ago? And then I was just reading about the history of it and the engineering, the artwork, the sound, what they did with the limited memory in these games at the time. And I read that there was a Pinball Expo in Chicago. So I thought, I'll go to that then. So I flew over. And I just wanted to see and hear them talk about just how they created these incredible games. And a guy was going around there who did a podcast called Jeff Teolis. And I recognized this guy because I was listening to his show. And he came up to me and said, "Do you mind if I talk to you just for this show about what you think of the expo?" And I said, "Sure, yeah." He said, "I'm Jeff." I said, "Oh, yeah." I listened to the show. I said, "I'm Mark." And he went, "We know who you are." And I'm thinking, how? Because I don't expect people to. I've been fortunate enough to work on a lot of shows and games and things that have been really successful, or be part of, taking on a legacy of other characters, things like that. But it's all driven through me genuinely loving this stuff. And somehow they knew of my work and knew that I'd booked a ticket. And I ended up getting introduced to a whole bunch of the people by him that make these games. And I went on from that to work with a bunch of them on different games. So a few years ago, Nickelodeon approved me to perform 6 characters for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. And then Stern Pinball in Chicago, they did a TMNT pinball machine. So I was Splinter. And so I ended up being the guy that you hear go, "Choose your turtle. You have chosen Leonardo." And that is, I got to say the immortal line, "And that is how they became the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles." And so I'm kind of like taking you through this game. And then I ended up performing "Peep Up and Rock Steady, I'll get you turtles," all this stuff. And then Baxter and Baxter Fly, Master Shredder, he's coming to get you. And so doing my take on those things and Casey Jones. But that was a great thing to be part of, because it's one of these things where you're just happy to be there.
Yeah.
On a lot of these projects, sometimes you're just happy to be in the room and then to work with them. In fact, we recorded that during the pandemic, during the apocalypse. So I was linking up live from this room, from my studio in the UK, to them in Chicago. In fact, I think it would be to Jerry in Seattle. Anyway, to them. And we did it all that way. And then they, one was sent over from Chicago, and I have one right here. But there's other pinball machines that I've worked on since then. And who knows, maybe stuff in the future. Can't tell, couldn't say. I'd like to say, but I'd be in trouble for saying.
I remember there was actually at the theater I used to go to, they had a vintage Empire Strikes Back pinball machine. Well, I asked him about it because I was like, "Is this vintage?" Because it looked really old, it looked really worn, and they said, "Yeah, that's from 1980, 1981." And apparently they had it refurbished and everything. It was a vintage. God knows how much money it would go for now. Star Wars pinball machine from the 80s.
Well, there's a classic, now would it be Gottlieb? Star Wars pinball machine. Hang on. Data East. There was a classic Data East game, and it had an R2-D2 in it that jumped up and down. And I've got a Star Wars pinball machine here, and just the sound design's fantastic. But I've had on my machines here, I've had my friend Pinball Phil. Hello, Pinball Phil. He's basically done audio upgrades on all my machines. And a year or so back, the sound designer from the Star Wars project Jerry, he flew over and he stayed over here. We had a couple of days of just creative fun. And he pressed start on my Star Wars pinball machine. He went, "Holy crap!" We'd had new speakers, a new amp, and new sub, the whole thing, and it was a cinematic experience. And he said, "This sounds better than any production machine he's heard. It was so good." But oh my God, I mean, yeah, there's so much. I love pinball because it's something. It's a game, but it's still real. You got an actual, real, physical thing going on there. This world under glass, and the audio is so important. Without the sound, you're only experiencing 50% of the game, like a movie, like a TV show. Sounds so important.
Yeah. I guess like what we were talking about does coincidentally tie into the next thing I had, is that you had the privilege of being in a Star Wars movie in the Phantom Menace.
Yeah, I really did.
Which, I guess, what was that experience like, especially for Phantom Menace, which was the biggest movie ever made at the time when that came out?
It was huge. So I grew up a huge Star Wars fan. Huge. The VHS tape that I hired the most as a kid was the making of Star Wars. And I watched that again and again and again. And I learned so much and was inspired so much by watching that. Even learning things like, oh my God, the performer of Miss Piggy is the same guy that performs Yoda. Oh my God, he's my new favorite performer. And then everyone was my new favorite something. To watch Ben Burt create the sound effects, the sound design of the lightsabers and the laser blasters. To watch the guys at Industrial Light and Magic create all these, almost like making new tech, using tech, but using it in new ways to shoot the film. And then, John Williams' score, every component of the making of that Star Wars film, all of them, it's a masterclass in how to bring stuff together. So, from being and even down to my mom used to get me all the Star Wars figures.
The little tiny ones.
Yeah.
The Kenner, the little Kenner action figures.
Exactly, and I would make little scenes on the family video camera where when I turn into a pyromaniac and I'd make my own fires and explosions out the back on the backyard. I shut that down pretty quick. But anyway, so I went from being a big Star Wars fan to pretty early on with me doing this for a living from the voice side of work to just getting a phone call out of the blue from my agent in London at the time saying, "Are you free next Tuesday to meet up with the director of the casting director of a new Star Wars film?" And I said, "Let me just check. Yes." It's that,
whatever previous engagement I have canceled. I am going down there.
There are no other engagements. They've all ended. This is the only engagement ever now. And because as a Star Wars fan, this was very exciting because it was the first Star Wars film in 16 years since Jedi. And so nobody really knew what the story was, what the characters looked like, any of this. So I went down and I met up with Robin Gerland, the casting director, in a hotel, and we had a good chat, and I was shown just little piece of A4 with a few lines on and a character description. It didn't say their name or the context. It just there were little bits of direction like aloof ambassador or military style English person or other world like alien or shop dweller or things like that. And I performed a few things that they liked, and within a week or so I was at Abbey Road Studios, the legendary Abbey Road Studios.
Oh my God.
The Beatles studio. It's the Beatles studio, Michael. So I'm on the train down to Abbey Road Studios. I walk across that famous Abbey Road road crossing, go into Abbey Road. That in itself was a thrill. And then I was able to say the words, "Hello, it's Marc Silk in for George Lucas." And then she said, the lady at reception said, "Oh, Mr. Silk, he's expecting you. Take a seat." And you go, "Oh my God, of course he is." And so I then took a seat. There was a little sofa in the corner of the lobby, and I sat down, and I suddenly thought, what the hell am I doing here? And I experienced whatever epic grade nerves were. I was the most nervous I've ever been in my life. I mean, seriously. Because you go, you're at Abbey Road and George Lucas is up there and you're going to work with him on a bit and it's for the next Star Wars film. And oh my God. And then I had to kind of have a reality check where you go, well, let's just work this out. You're there. I think in a situation like that, you realize you're there because they see something in you that they like. And it's that realization of, no, you're there because you're going to bring something to this film that they enjoy. And so I was called upstairs and we recorded in the penthouse studio of Abbey Road Studios. And I remember as I walked in, there were a row of monitors with all different scenes and things up on there. And I looked straight down, almost like you shouldn't look at it, almost like you shouldn't be looking at this, even though of course I should. But for the first time I saw what no one else had really seen of what this next Star Wars film would look like. And it was very exciting. And then they had the guys from Skywalker Sound were there. They were on the desk. They had support from Abbey Road as well. 2 people from Abbey Road Studios were there in the little waiting area. And then there was a guy, they carried on to finishing off working on this one guy's voice session at the time. And I didn't know who he was or what the character was. And I know now it was Ahmed Best, who was Jar Jar Binks.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, so we got to say hello and goodbye, and that was it. and then about a couple of years ago, we were both signing at a Comic-Con. I got a chance to finally have a good chat with him. And he's such a nice guy. And he has a Star Wars pinball machine. But then I went in... They just said, look, we're going to go downstairs. We're going to just take 5. If you want to just go into the studio and just get yourself comfy, and then we'll come back in like 5-10 minutes. So I walk in there, and there was only one other person there, and it was George Lucas.
Oh my God.
Which is pretty much how I felt. And I kind of, again, it's that moment where you want to say a lifetime's worth of thoughts and feelings in about 3 seconds. And in the end, he went, "Hi," and I said, "It's so nice to meet you." I said, "Yeah, I'm so happy to be here."
So was he like behind the glass, or was he like in the room?
No, he was in the room the whole time we were recording. Yeah. So during the whole recording process, so George was there. George was in the big recording room there. There was Robin Girl and Rick McCallum, the producer. He was in the room with the guys from Skywalker Sound on the other side of the glass on the mixing desk. But while we were just waiting for the others to come back, and I said, it's such a treat to be working with you. Thank you so much for bringing me in. And he went, "Oh, you're welcome." I said, "Would you like a potato chip?" And he offered me this pret-a-manger ready salted potato chip. And I said to him, "Oh, thank you, George." I said, "I'd love to." I said, "But it would probably make me a bit crunchy sounding during the recording." And, okay. And then inside, my total thoughts are, "Oh my God, I've just turned down a potato chip from George Lucas. I should have taken the potato chip. I should have kept it and looked after it in a bell jar until they invented eBay."
I was just thinking, put it in a Ziploc and like put it in a jar and frame it.
This is the potential I could have had for George Lucas, and I remember it so well. It was in a red packet. And then when I'm saying this to them, I think it might make me a little bit crunchy. By this time, the others had come back and were hearing all this in the other room. And the guy from Skywalker Sound on talkback went, I said, that was it. Yeah, I thought, I remember what we said. I thought, hang on, this is my conversational in. So I said, it might be a bit crunchy on mic. I said, actually, have you tried Golden Wonder's new low fat potato chips? They're 95% fat free. And then this voice from Skywalker comes through going, yeah, but don't they contain ethylmethacate, that dangerous artificial preservative? And then Robin Gerland said, yes, sometimes the low-fat ones are worse for you than the high-fat chips. And then George Lucas said, yes, sometimes I like to take a whole sack of the high-fat chips back home and deep fry them. I'm thinking, I'm having a comedy moment with George Lucas and the guys behind the next Star Wars about potato chips.
I wouldn't even. I was like, am I even awake right now? Like this is happening. Like,
oh god! And the thing was, I was on cloud nine because it was such a big thing for me. I'd just done I'd worked on one film before then, which was Chicken Run. And so I was brought in as an extra clucker.
I was gonna say, I was curious because I saw you listed, and I'm like, but it's an almost entirely female cast. That's why I was wondering what your role in that was.
Well, I'm extremely versatile, but I was brought in right at the end of the recordings of that, when they needed to fill out certain moments with clucks. And so there was a casting call that went out, and I was asked, could I just send in a recording of me clucking? And I thought, well, I need to do something to make this sound special and for me to stand out. Because, frankly, if you say you do this for a living, you should be able to do, to perform chickens clucking. So I wanted to make sure it was more than just more than that. So I recorded about 5 or 6 different moments in a chicken's day. So... Because with a sense, because I loved Aardman's work, Peter Lord with Aardman and Wallace and Gromit and all of this. So Peter Lord and Nick Park, and so I was coming from the same sense of humor. So I thought, well, let's sort of, by doing this, show that I get their sense of humor and what they'll need. So I recorded like a waking up chicken going, and then it kind of it's like walking down the street chicken early in the morning, going to the coffee shop, kind of thing, and then getting a little bit nervous because Mrs. Tweedy's coming out of the farmhouse, and then being picked up, and things like that. But again, if you do this for a living, you should kind of be able to figure that out. So I thought, I know what I'll do to try and at least show I get it, whatever that means. Let's do something extra. So I got hold of an instrumental version of Frank Sinatra's New York, New York. And like Muppet style, I did like a 5-part chicken clucking harmony of New York, New York. So like with like the chickens, one pan to the left, one pan to the right. The production values were great, and it was all it was all this, and I got it. And every time it was time for me to step up to the mic, they go, "Can we have a Sinatra chicken in, please?"
I remember on the show Robot Chicken, the credits, they would always have the crew members of Robot Chicken would do, but they do it as chickens.
Yeah.
So they just collect the
Yep. You gotta do it. But again, there's all these other, like, that kind of thing that's very Muppety influenced. And then you've got even down to like things I still like, you do a little nod to every now and then. My favorite cow noise. So what's your favorite cow noise?
I was going to say, that's an out of context clip if I've ever heard it.
So I hope you don't mind me asking, now that they've all gone, what is your favorite cow noise? And there's a black and white commercial. And it's Dawes Butler, who was the voice of so many characters for Hanna-Barbera, Yogi Bear, Huckleberry Hound, all these different characters. Yeah. And it's literally him going moo, moo, moo. And you go,
It sounds
yeah,
like Mr. Peabody. If he was a
yeah,
cow.
but there's a lesson there. Sometimes the simplicity really works. Sometimes you do it, it's just the tin bark, 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 bark. You go, yeah, that's pretty funny. That works.
I remember there was an abridged series on YouTube once where it was this guy, this cow, and they didn't do a stock cow sound. It was one of the guys, the voice actors, doing it, and it was just moo. And it wasn't even like a cow. It just was this viscerally.
Doesn't matter.
Yeah, no, but
It's
my
just
favorite
funny.
was like trying to make the cow feel better that he wasn't gonna die, and then he's like, "What are you telling that cow? Of course he's going to the slaughterhouse." And you just hear him go, "Moo!"
But again, the choices you make, and these are life-changing moments. So like Chicken Run, but in particular Star Wars. I mean, it was Star Wars that kind of opened up so many doors for me. For anyone that does any kind of creative thing, there'll be something that kind of lets other people see that you've been part of that. And the logic can sometimes be from the outside in. You go, well, if you were good enough for him, maybe you'll be okay for us. And a lot of people put their trust in me after I'd worked on Star Wars and worked in that situation. And so I've worked on, there's been a bunch of Star Wars related things since then. I mean, even down to like Topps cards in New York, super collectible stuff. They've done a number of collectible cards of the character I performed in Star Wars. And look, my role in Star Wars is small. It is, but believe me, I know my place. But you're still that guy that did that character in Star Wars,
Yeah, because I guess it's like, for the people that don't know, you were two characters, I believe, because you were one of the senators in the on Coruscant, and I believe you were also one of the Nemoidians.
Oh my God, you really know this stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
I was called Aks Moe, who was
Yeah.
the ambassador of Malastare. The Congress of Malastare concur with the right honorable delegate of the Trade Federation. A commission must be appointed now. Where's Michael? Him.
Yeah.
The exact words. Those are the exact words. and the other one was a Nemoidian who's got like a big, tall head. And it was all kind of like, quick, sir, a transmission from the planet, sir. He's got the ventilation stuff, sir. All this kind of stuff.
I was curious about that because because I looked it up earlier before we had started, because I was like, what character was that? So I looked it up, and it was with that like super distinct Nemoidian with like the goggle eyes and like the respirator mouth.
Yeah.
And yeah, and I was curious because I don't know if it's meant to be two different characters or they appear twice and they have two different actors. Because that same Nemoidian appears at the beginning of the movie, and it's a woman's voice.
Yes, it is. It's and if you look at the credits, the very last credit, it says, I think it's Tiger, and I believe it's George Lucas's daughter.
Okay.
But there is still a section later on in the film where you hear me very clearly go, "Yes, sir."
Yeah.
And so I still perform that line. They left that bit in. So I think either they just wanted to change the voice and give it her voice, or she wanted to roll and they gave her that part. But the bit of me saying "yes, sir" is still there.
Yeah, and then there's the line at the end, like before the ship blows up, where like you actually speak. Because I had always wondered if that was meant to be the same character, or there just happened to be, like, I thought maybe it was like a position the Nemoidians had where there's just the binocular respirator mouth Nemoidian on every ship. That's what I just
poor little
thought.
sausage.
Yeah.
So but that was quite incredible. But the spin-off, the spin-offs of being part of that have been quite remarkable. So even down to I do a lot of Comic-Cons now, and that's more the bigger body of work. So Star Wars is obviously an important part, but you get so many people that have played the games or watched the shows, the animations, the films, there's a lot, theme parks, everything. So there's a lot. So People are very nice at Comic Cons and are very nice and fill my day, bringing things for me to sign. I even did a talk at a local school a couple of weeks ago. And at the end, like the 50 of the students just held back and they all brought stuff for me to sign for them. This is very nice because I don't assume that people will necessarily know my name, but they tend to know the work because there's some pretty well-known characters. But even down to the Star Wars thing again, end of last year, I hosted a Star Wars symphony, and it was, look at this for the bill, it was the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra and me. Yeah, the Royal Philharmonic Orchestra and me live at the Royal Albert Hall. And I was your onstage host for the whole thing. And I took you through it and then, told a couple of stories of working on it. And my whole process of deciding, writing the script for it was, if I was in that audience and I'm a Star Wars fan, what do I want to hear? What do I want to hear that guy on the stage do or say? That'll make me excited, bring me in. And that's kind of what we did. And the producer Tim Burton, he's fantastic. The music that was created for it was wonderful. But I brought a special request into it that wasn't there originally, which is, we got to play the Cantina Band. We need the Cantina Band. And so we added that to the original programming. And it's one of the biggest applause breaks in the whole show, because, well, first of all, when you're in it's at the Royal Albert Hall. This is a big deal. And the demand for tickets was so great. We did 2 shows on the one Sunday. So across the day, we had we did it to over 10,000 people. And my mom was in the audience of the nighttime show in one of the best box in the Royal Albert Hall with my family and friends. And at the end, just before the last tune, I asked the whole room to help me say thank you to my mom, who was over there. And they went nuts for her. They roared and cheered, and they put the house lights up, and my mom waved, and he goes, "That's fantastic." And at the end of it, I said, "Oh, and my brother's here as well. Hello, Paul." And from the side of the Royal Albert Hall, he goes, "Hello." This is great. But to be part of that, I mean, just to be in the audience. I mean, to hear when this show starts, you hear the 20th Century Fox Overture played live. And normally you go straight from that straight into the main Star Wars theme. But we learned from the very first time we did this, a good few years ago, make sure you pause for applause, because the crowd go nuts for it. I did. You want to applaud after you've heard that. And, it's just exciting. So to be, to play a part in that was great too. And I was just disappointed I couldn't be in the audience, but I was busy at work on the stage.
I've always wanted to go, because I know they do those shows at concert halls sometimes where they'll do a soundtrackless version, and they'll have a live orchestra do the movie while you're watching it. And I've always wanted to go to one of those things.
Oh, it's a real thrill. And there's one I'm going to in July. I think it's July. And it's called Stand By for Action 2, because it's the second time they've done it, except this time it's even better. And it's all the classic scores from the Jerry Anderson shows. So Jerry Anderson, the guy behind Thunderbirds, Stingray, Captain Scarlet, Fireball XL5, Terrorhawks, all these iconic British TV shows. And again, going back to what we were saying before, these loves of shows and things all come together. So the guy that gave the green light to Jerry Anderson for these shows is Lou Grade, who also gave the green light to The Muppet Show.
Because I remember they had filmed that in the UK. Because for some weird reason, nobody in the States wanted to fund that show.
Yeah, unbelievable. Because they started on Saturday Night Live before The Muppet Show.
Yeah, have you ever heard the famous quote from one of the writers of SNL when the Muppets were on SNL for a period?
Oh, tell me.
Oh, well, because famously the SNL writers didn't get along with the Jim Henson stuff. Like they didn't like doing that kind of stuff because they thought tonally it didn't work. And I think even Jim and all the other guys eventually just kind of realized that it just doesn't mesh with SNL. But one of the head writers for SNL was famously quoted as saying, "I don't write for felt."
That's a great quote. Have you done a tour around Rockefeller Center, and you go up to NBC and seen so you get shown the Saturday Night Live studio, but then on the same floor, just round the corner, there's a little like closet with a whole load of pipes, and it had been shut off forever, but then rediscovered and restored a few years ago. And now it's part of the tour. And so what would happen is when Henson and the crew and Frank Oz and all the Jerry Jewell, when they were there doing the Muppets, they had time to kill. And being bored creative people, they found this closet full of pipes and they dressed all the pipes up Muppet style. And they're still there.
Oh, so they just left everything there.
It was just all left, all hidden away. And so now they've restored everything, and it's behind glass, and you can go up and see it in Rockefeller Center in New York when you do the NBC studio tour.
I'm surprised a lot of that hadn't rotted away, honestly, given how old some of it was.
Oh, yeah, feather boas around, faces on pipes and things. It's brilliant. But of course it was Henson. It's quite a thing. But this, so you got so Lou Grade, who greenlit the Muppet Show, also greenlit Fireball XL5, Stingray, Thunderbirds, Captain Scarlet, the list goes on. And through sheer fluke, my good friend Alison, who I met at a studio in the UK here, and I called up a studio because I was looking to just take a look at this new studio here in Birmingham, in the heart of the UK, heart of England. And we met up, and then she became a good friend. And it turns out her dad's a guy called Michael Grade. Michael Grade's dad was Lou Grade.
Oh, my God.
And these strange connections, it's amazing how, these worlds collide. But yeah, so we're doing, so there's going to be Standby for Action 2 at Birmingham Symphony Hall. And the acoustics in that place, they're even better than the Royal Albert Hall. It's stunning, that room. It's so good. And it's apparently there's going to be some surprises on stage. I can't imagine what they'll be.
So is so that's another one where they're just doing a bunch of film scores?
Well, it's the classic themes from all these TV shows and classic moments, but also they'll be celebrating 50 years of Stingray. So 50 or 60 years? 5,000 years of Stingray. 1960, hang on, 1964. Hang on, let me just check my facts here. I should know, because I'm in them. Here we go. Tunes of Danger. Here we go. So 50, celebrating 50. Here we go. 50. Oh, come on. No, it must be 60 years. 1964.
I was going to say, because I was pretty sure Thunderbirds was like mid-60s?
Yeah, 64. So Stingray was before then. Of course it is. Why did I even have to check that? Clearly I didn't get enough sleep. So it's going to be incredible. And so celebrating, you'll hear all those incredible Barry Gray scores from Thunderbirds and Stingray and beyond and before, plus some other surprises. And as of I worked on the reboot of Thunderbirds on TV a few years ago. So I played a few characters in that, including the main character was the incredible Captain Rigby with super baked on eyebrows. It was absolute. I want a jacket like Captain Rigby. But yeah, so to play him was a thrill. But then since working on that, I now work with Jamie Anderson, who's Jerry Anderson's son, and I've taken over the legacy of some of these other iconic characters from those shows. So the lead character, well, well, one of the leads. No, who was the lead? Who were we kidding? Was Troy Tempest in Stingray. And his puppet, he was if you look at the picture of, if you type in Troy Tempest Stingray into your browser, the puppet, the actual model of the puppet, the sculpture was actually based on James Garner.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And
no, I need to see this now.
Yeah, and you go, what, really? And I only found this out a few years ago, and you go, oh my God, it was, yeah. And it wasn't meant to. It wasn't, and I don't think it was known until, or realized until a good little, recently. But yeah, so I'm the new voice of Troy Tempest. And so I watched a whole bunch of, I went through the whole lot of the original Stingray episodes, because you would it's like you're picking up that instrument and but playing new tunes on it. That's the metaphor. And what I realized was it's a lot of eyebrow acting. So
yeah. I feel bad that, like, well, I guess technically it's not, I shouldn't feel bad, but as a dumb American, we didn't really get Thunderbirds. I feel like we might have on some channel, but it was never a mainstream thing here. Sadly, the most mainstream Thunderbirds thing we got was the shitty movie from like 2005, the live action one.
No! It's so wrong! Yeah, that's just wrong. Well, Thunderbirds, you go back and listen to just the soundtrack from Thunderbirds and Stingray. Thunderbirds, these were movies. These were mini movies, except they're on TV. And the iconic opening of Thunderbirds and that voice of 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then there's Thunderbirds are go. And it's explosions and action and chasing and
I think the
rockets.
I've watched bits of Captain Scarlet, which I am blown away at, like, the production value on some of that stuff for the period it was made.
Oh, it's astonishing. Have you seen? Well, if you get a chance, on streaming somewhere will be HD versions, restorations of these shows, and they look astonishing still. And you've got the special effects work was done by the guy that went on to do James Bond on Stingray, so on Thunderbirds, Derek Meddings. And then, and again, even these little things that you learn as a kid watching them, like the importance of all these little details. So in the countdown of Thunderbirds, like the importance of the number 2. So it's 5, 4, 3, 2, not 2, 2. Like it's like that guy 1, and oh God, just but the orchestration, it's huge. Same with Stingray, and it's in terms of getting you ready for an exciting TV show. You watch this for the first time as a kid, and you hear "Stand by for action." In fact, give me just 1 second there. I'll just mute you 1 second. It's my mom. I'll just say hello. I'll put the mic back up. So, it's my mom. Hello. You can say hello, Mom.
Oh, hello.
Hello.
You're enjoying yourselves then.
We've been very well behaved, Mom. This is Michael Edwards. Michael, this is my mom, Anne.
Hello.
Well, we're all having a great time. So,
All right then.
well, I'll give you a call after this, Mom, and then hopefully we can have food.
Okay, look, bye-bye.
Love you lots, Mom. Bye. Steve, this is real life. So, yeah. Meanwhile. But yeah, if you get a chance to, if you just want to hear examples of incredible theme tunes and, a scoring that's created to make these, to just lift each of these moments, Barry Gray scores for Thunderbirds and Stingray, and you look at what they did for Captain Scarlet. It's really beautiful stuff. He's up there as a composer and arranger for TV, along with John Williams, and you name them. It's massive.
I remember one of the things I was curious about, because there's a YouTuber I follow called Cat Icarus, and he's British, and he would occasionally talk about British programming, things like this, because a lot of things we didn't get. Because it's so fascinating to see, like, English speaking things that we in America didn't get, just to see like all this difference. Because I don't know if we got, I think Danger Mouse played here, but it was before I was born. It was before I was born.
Yeah, and as far as I understand, it was never the kind of iconic thing that it was over here. It doesn't check how good it was. Whereas the reboot that I worked on, that did go to the States, I think.
Yeah, we got it's a Netflix original here, I believe.
Yeah, and then if you get time, I'm in Lego mini movies as well on Netflix.
Yeah.
So I'm in Lego City. Yeah, Lego. So I do a bunch of the stuff for the Lego City stuff on Netflix. As a Lego fan as well, if you happen to go to Legoland in Windsor, near London here, I'm the voice of a stack of the Lego attractions there as well. So there's a great big haunted house, where I mean particularly frightening, and welcoming you to the amazing haunted castle here at Legoland. It's all this stuff.
Yeah, because he's how I learned a fair amount about a lot of British programming that I had never heard of. Because I remember going down a rabbit hole of Jerry Anderson stuff. I think like the one I was most intrigued by actually was the thing he technically didn't make. It was a thing called Dick Spanner.
Dick Spanner, that was in the 80s. Yeah.
That was one of the ones I was most interested in, and I watched a bit of that, and I really liked that when I watched of that.
Well, do you know what? I was at school, but I remember enjoying that as a kid. I need to probably revisit it and go, was it good? But that was kind of it looks so stop motion-y. Yeah,
because I have watched, because my parents have watched quite a bit of British programming, though it's a lot of the more common stuff that we got, because Mr. Bean was everywhere, and I love Mr. Bean. I'm more of a Blackadder fan, but I love Mr. Bean.
Oh God, Rowan Atkinson is so good. Blackadder is such a great show.
My favorite show of all time is Red Dwarf.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Red Dwarf.
That's my absolute favorite TV show like ever.
Well, did you see the reboot of Red Dwarf from about 6 years ago?
Yeah, I watched some bits and pieces of it. I've seen a few episodes of the newer seasons. It's still pretty good. I was actually kind of surprised.
Well, my friend Alison I mentioned earlier, she invited me to go along with her and her family to Pinewood Studios to watch a taping of one of those episodes. And that was great fun to watch that come to life and meet them again there. Because with I know them from doing Comic-Cons. So Danny, I've known Danny for years. Danny John Jules, who's Cat. So I've known Danny for ages. So we've done Comic-Cons together, and then I bump into Chris Barry fairly frequently at Comic-Cons as well, and he's brilliant. And I first became aware of Chris Barry in a UK show called Spitting Image.
I was about to say Spitting Image.
And he's great, and he, like any decent performer, he'll take a nugget of something and just magnify it by 100 times. And there was a guy called there was a sportscaster called David Coleman. And he presented a show in the UK, a pretty famous show called Grandstand, and he's that guy, famous British TV guy, so great. In Spitting Image, they turned him into this satirical character that what they did in Spitting Image was so loved. There were people in the playground on the schoolyard repeating the Spitting Image version of David Coleman. Why are 12-year-olds repeating David Coleman from Spitting Image, an adult show, late 10 o'clock on a Sunday night? But Chris, there was a catchphrase that David Coleman would say every now and then, which is quite remarkable. And that's that. But he wore this earpiece that you'd see on the screen. So the Spitting Image puppet, there were these huge, like human-sized heads.
They're like 3-4 foot tall puppets.
They were enormous. Yeah. The sculptures were quite incredible, but real, like grotesque. But that's probably the wrong word to use. But these larger than life, very expressive puppets, and so they had incredible puppeteers who often were also the voice people behind it too. So Chris Barry would be there going, instead of just going extraordinary, he'd hold the earpiece and go, extraordinary. And it's only a tiny little thing, but it's huge. And, you sort of learn by watching that kind of stuff about how to take a tiny little moment that and dial it in and magnify it 100 times to make it something that it was never originally. And it's so much funnier because of that. But Chris Barry was brilliant. He was also the voice of Ronald Reagan and a stack of them for that show.
Funny that I actually learned about spitting image because of the Ronald Reagan, and I only learned about that because I was listening to Genesis, and I was watching the music video for
Land of Confusion.
Yeah, which is my favorite Genesis song.
Yeah.
And that's how I learned about spitting image, was through that music video.
Those puppets, of the best. Well, yeah, so Chris is great. And in fact, my friend Steve, his name's Steve Nallen. He was a puppeteer and voice performer for Spitting Image. He did both, like Muppets. They did both together, so they do everything all at once. And so Steve Nallen, he was the voice of Margaret Thatcher. So a guy performing the woman, and it was brutal what he did.
I didn't even know when I watched clips. I didn't even realize that wasn't a woman doing that voice. How good that voice is.
Yeah, and it was so popular that he'd end up like dressing up as her for chat shows because it was such a popular character. And then he'd be the voice of David Attenborough. And there was a politician in the UK called Roy Hattersley, and he was sort of known to be quite spitty when he spoke. Well, because it was Spitting Image, they actually did a puppet of Roy Hattersley with a water pump. So it was Roy Hattersley. So every time he spoke, it was like spitting everywhere. And, just all these brilliant little things they did. And again, details that you learn that you can use within what I do or animators do or puppetry. When you watch, say, Creature Comforts, the Aardman animations, often the thing that makes them so special are the extra little bits of spice they've put in. My friend Tim Allen, he's one of the best stop-motion animators in the world, and he works on... He worked on Pinocchio, and he's done Chicken Run and Creature Comforts, and he's drawn the sheep and all these things. Club Penguin for Disney. He's done loads. Fantastic Mr. Fox and Corpus Bride. He's done loads of them.
God.
But you look at... But if you ever get a chance to talk to Tim, it's really worth it. He's a genius at that. The craftsmanship of what he does is wonderful in terms of like stop motion character performance. But going back to the bits of business often in the background are just as important as what's going on in the foreground. So what Aardman always did, Muppets did, and Spitting Image would do is sometimes. Well, what Steve told me once was, it might be that they got a sketch that was okay, but it wasn't the funniest sketch in the world. It got you there, What he'd sometimes do is, if he just as a thing to do, he'd go and say, pick up a cat puppet and just go in the background and like put the cat up. And like the cat would like would like come round, look at you, go, and just walk off again. just a little bits of business in the background that just lifted that moment to make it just funnier. Just one of those extra little bits of magic you can put in there that just bring the whole scene to life. And it took a perfectly serviceable sketch, but made it funnier because of what was going on in the background. It's like Creature Comforts. You'll have it where there's a bunch of penguins, and then there'll be a little baby one in the background that just falls off a chair.
I think my favorite in all of Creature Comforts is in the original short. When they're talking, I think they're horses. I think it's supposed to be horses, and the horse that just takes a shit in the background, and it's this just massive pile of poop that just comes it just. And my favorite part about it is
a gift.
Yeah, no, my favorite part is the person they're talking to, like the horse. They animate it where the horse looks back for like half a second when that happens, and then just goes right back to doing the interview. And that kills me every time. Just that little half-second look back at it.
These little moments, though, you learn so much from watching other people, and just how they react in certain situations. And often it's these little things that make it even bigger. But yeah, creature comforts. Well, actually, you're saying about the horse. There's, I'm sure you'll have seen this. If you haven't, go and just find it on the tubes, on the online tubes. And there's a great scene where it's Jim Henson and Frank Oz, and they're doing camera test. The camera test.
Is it the Muppet movie one?
Yeah, yes, it is. Yeah. It was for the Muppet movie because they'd never taken them outside, and they wanted to just sort of check: does this really work outside? Can you make them? Does it make sense in the real world? And you see them talking to this bunch of cows.
Talking to the cows. Yeah.
And there's all these, there's all these really great cow gags. But again, what makes this so good is you realize the importance of the thing that really made them work is it was Jim and Frank. It was Jim Henson and Frank Oz, and it was their sensibilities and their sense of humor. They were those characters. You can't write that stuff. You can write things for Kermit the Frog or Fozzie or Miss Piggy, but really, to make it what it was, the thing that really made it magical was it was such a part of Jim, and they were such a part of Frank. If you ever hear an interview with Frank Oz, and they say, of course, because you were the voice of Fozzie and Miss Piggy, weren't you? And he will take them down, rightly so, because he says, no, I was the performer of those characters. The voice is just like a part of it, and to us, it's a big part of it because. It just is, but really, of course, it was everything. It is. He's right. Of course, he's right because it's the whole performance. It's all those little bits of, just the bits of magic that make it live and breathe, and it make her real or make Fozzie real. But yeah, to see Jim and Frank on this great documentary of Muppets and Men, again, you see Jim and Frank rehearsing. And they've got the puppets on their hands, and but you can see them, reading the script, reading through this idea, but they're making each other laugh, and it's that dynamic that all these other, fantastic moments came out of. It's I completely understand why you also love the Muppets. Oh my God! Here's another link. Things that bring it all together. Okay. So I'm pretty certain my love of animation, Muppets, and Pinball, and the Pointer Sisters all happened at the same time. There's a niche one. And it was all in one thing, and it was on Sesame Street, and it was the pinball number count.
I was gonna say, is it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, like that thing?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and the singers on that were the Pointer Sisters, the people behind these 80s classics.
Yeah,
so it's them. It's great animation. It's super groovy, and it's pinball. And so of course you're learning to count. You're entertained by this really far-out animation and pinball and the music, and then it goes to Muppets, and you go, oh my God. And you go, what a way to learn.
The 70s style of animation is so fascinating to me because the 70s has never been considered like an amazing period for animation, but there's this such distinct style for a lot of animation in the 70s, like that Schoolhouse Rock, very limited kind of style.
Well, because that came out of the Hanna-Barbera thing in the 60s, where to create so many episodes of shows, they developed that limited frame animation technique where instead of having full frame, it's like you only use the ones you really need. And the classic Scooby-Doo gag of just the background that just keeps repeating itself.
It's like the neck thing. That's like the one I remember learning that several years ago, is that the reason all Hanna-Barbera characters have collars is because they didn't want to animate a neck moving. So
and of course, when you really want to save on budget, you just turn the lights out in Scooby-Doo and just see the eyes move. Yeah. It's all those gags.
Actually, funny.
No, you go ahead.
I guess the funny thing is that I guess this also comes back to a question I was having was because you've also done for adverts for Cartoon Network and things like that. You've done Shaggy and Scooby and some of those characters.
Oh, there's so much I did for Cartoon Network. Yeah. So in '98. I was brought onto Radio 1, the big UK radio station, the BBC station, and they just moved Scooby-Doo from Hanna-Barbera into the Warner Brothers family. And I was brought on as the voice guy in the UK that performs those characters, which was a huge thing. And so for a week, I was based down in London and promoting this on Radio 1's breakfast show each morning at the morning show. And I like taught the hosts how to perform Scooby-Doo, and they had listeners call in and do their own, hysterical versions of Scooby and Shaggy. But yeah, so for me, it's me that you go, Zoinks, like, man, this place is really creepy, Scoob, pal. Right, Scoob? Yeah, right, Scooby-Dooby-Doo. And so that's how, it's, to be part of that, again, incredible. And I got brought in by Cartoon Network for a lot of stuff for years, and so I'd be brought in for things like they did viewer mail with Droopy. And I recorded loads of. In fact, I think I recorded a bunch of it here. In my place, in my studio. But you'd hear, "Hello, you happy people. You know what? I'm happy. Today, I'm feeling kind of hyper." And you go, "Oh, God." And it was such a pleasure for me, like, continuing the legacy of these things that I just thought were so special. In fact, you said about Scooby. I got to meet Don Messick, the original voice of Scooby.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, so, and he was.
Was this pre-stroke, or was this?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it was in '95, and I wasn't working in animation at that point. I was still working in radio as a producer and doing bits of voice work on for radio. And so there was an animation event in London, and it was an exhibition and a sale of original Scooby-Doo animation art. In fact, I've got one just hidden there. I mean, I'll throw this screen in the dumpster. But just there is an original Scooby-Doo production cell from the early series, and it's signed by Hanna and Barbera, Bill Hanna, Joe Barbera, and it's personally signed to me by Don Messick.
Oh my God!
Yeah, and it was lovely, and I you heard them talk and welcome him, and clearly there was something happening. He wasn't particularly, he was slowing down a bit. They mentioned about he performed Scooby, and he did Boo Boo. Gee, Yogi, don't tell Ranger Smith about the picnic basket. All this stuff. But he couldn't do Muttley anymore at that point because he'd stopped smoking. So the reason he could do that lovely Muttley wheezing laugh was because he smoked so much. But then, what meant a lot to me was a lot of people were queuing up to like meet him and say hello, and it was understandably, they were kind of treating him like a sort of a voice jukebox, and I get it because it's what you want,
Yeah, I try not to do that when I interview people because I know because I'm a fan. I'm a fan of the people I get, but yeah. I don't want to be like do the thing. I like you when you do the thing. Do the thing. Yeah, I want it to be if they do the character, I want it to be organic. I don't want it to be like I don't want to poke and prod at the person. I think I've only done that twice, and it was just because I did it twice. It was like one time like 10 years ago. And when I interviewed Jason Griffith, for the guy who did Sonic the Hedgehog for several years.
Yeah, I was listening to that earlier today.
Yeah, that was after. I hate that I didn't record it. It was after the interview. And I had just said, like, you were the one I grew up with because I was like 7 when he started playing Sonic, and I
Yes,
just
yeah,
asked him, "Could you do it for me?" And he said my name, and it was he did it as Sonic, and I hate that I didn't record it.
Oh man,
it upset
it
me
means so much
much.
to you, that stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I was so happy that I got a chance to just talk to him, and I said to him, "This is '95, so this is before really the web as we know it. It was definitely before Google or YouTube or any of that stuff. It was when all this was just fields and black and white." But I got to meet him, and I said to him, "You know what an absolute treat it is to meet him. I've learned so much from watching your work." He went, and he was genuinely meant something to him, because everybody else there had been, just ask him to just do voices. And I just said to him, "Is it true that he ended up getting the job of Droopy because they'd heard so and so wasn't available, and they heard he did a good impression of
the guy who played Smee and Peter Pan. I forget his name.
Yeah, that guy. Yeah, that guy.
His name.
Red guy." And he said to me, so I asked him this thing about this piece of history, and he went, "How do you know this?" I said, "How do you know this?" I said, "It's you, Don." I said, "It matters." I said, I've watched everything I can to learn about what you do and how you do it. And he was lovely. And I have 2 photos of me with Don Messick. Right, and I look about 12, but it was fantastic. It was lovely. And then the same gallery, fairly soon after, Yardley Smith from The Simpsons, she was there as well. And I have a signed, beautiful original Simpsons thing where she signed her name. And I said, total naivety. Here's the slightly, just fanboy kid starting out. And I didn't know what else she'd done, because I knew she was in The Simpsons, which is massive. But she said, I said, what other kind of stuff do you tend to get up to? And she said, "Oh, I'm working on a movie at the moment." I said, "All right, anything? What should I look out for?" She said, "Oh, it's with Jack Nicholson."
Oh, I think she was
As Good as It Gets.
As Good as It Gets. I was gonna say, I was trying to remember what I knew. It was the movie with the dog. That's like all I could remember.
She was lovely, and it's so nice when you get to meet people and they're kind of they're up for a chat. It goes back to what I was saying before. Sometimes you just want to be in the room.
Oh, because I remember, I think like my favorite meeting like a person was Tim Curry. Actually was here a few years back, and it was post-stroke. So they had him sanctioned off in this area with like a curtain, and it was literally like touch and go. Like you couldn't, they didn't want you, which makes sense. He had an insanely long line, and they didn't want you, like, you could say hi to him, but like you couldn't like have a long conversation with him.
Yeah.
And I got a picture with him because Tim Curry is my favorite actor of all time, like my favorite actor.
Oh.
And I met him, and I had to kneel down to get a picture with him. And
That's respect for you right there.
Well, I
kneel down to you.
I said to him before we took the picture, I had said that he was one of the biggest reasons I wanted to become an actor.
Well,
and it was after the picture was taken, he grabbed my arm. And like everyone in the room, I hate, it sounds fake, but this is really what happened. He grabbed my arm, and everyone in that room looked at it like he had not done that the whole day. Like it was like he hadn't had a strong reaction. It felt like he had just been like, "Okay, thank you. Like, thank you for saying that about me." Like it felt like he didn't react to anything people would really say. And he like grabbed my arm, and he like pulled me in, and he said, "I wish you the best career."
That's wonderful.
Yeah, no, it was like he had never heard that all day.
Yeah.
Like he had like not heard anything like that all day. And it was
that's very touching. That means a lot. And to have experienced their reaction to that, you know what it means to you. That stays with you for the rest of your life, that.
Oh no, because it was just the shock of everyone in that room just looking at me like he had not done that at all. Like he had never reacted like that to anything anybody had said to him. Like
it's funny. I think a lot of this is how you are with people. So much of this is how you work with people. It's all about people. And it seems like an obvious thing to say, but there'll be people that you might hear are difficult to work with, or they're so big in your eyes because they matter to you so much that you've got so much respect for them that you almost think that they'll have a reputation for being, I don't know, aloof or standoffish. And you go, actually, no, sometimes it's just because they just want to be around people that they get, or that they want to spend time around. And even down to, I remember doing Comic-Cons with Dave Prowse, so Darth Vader, and I just wanted to say hello to him. And if there's a chance of getting something signed by him, that would be wonderful. And I was warned, well, he can be a bit. He sometimes just wants to do the business and get on with it. And so I watched him during the day, and he seemed okay, and we'd been at breakfast together as well, just like at Comic-Cons, you tend to be in the same hotel, so a lot of you sharing the same space. At the end of it, I just went up to him, and he'd watched me with other people, and he was so generous with his time, and he signed I've got this wonderful, signature that he wrote to me from Darth Vader to me, and it's lovely stuff like that. In fact, oh God, a couple of Aprils ago, I was at a Comic-Con, and there were a bunch of us that did voice work all together on this table. And there was Charles Martinet, Mario, and then a couple of others. And I was just having coffee with Kevin Conroy.
Oh my God!
Who, again, a total hero. I mean, he is Batman. That is Batman. And if you want a masterclass on this is voice acting, well, Kevin Conroy, and we were just having this chat about this lovely lamp that I'd seen him talk about online, and he was just telling me about his love for this beautiful lamp, and we were just chatting about that. And then we got the nod to go downstairs to take our tables and the places to sign for Comic-Con, and we were going to just grab a picture together, and then we sort of said, well, we'll get it next time, we'll get it later. And of course, within about 2 weeks, we lost him. And he
God.
Yeah. So, but it was so. And I'd met Kevin years ago when he just started performing Batman, and there was an exhibition at the NEC here, the National Exhibition Centre in Birmingham, and it was a Comic-Con thing. I think it was called Memorabilia back then. But it was a time when you'd still see animation cells at these kind of events. And there was a lady called Debbie Weiss who ran an animation art gallery. And she brought Kevin over with her. I guess he was promoting that series. But it was, people didn't really know who he was at that point because it was so early on. It was just this very cool looking guy. He was a movie star. He just walked past and you go, movie star. you just go, you're this chiseled movie star. And Debbie pulled me over. He said, Mark, I want to introduce you to my friend Kevin. And he went, hi, Mark, I'm Kevin. And you go, oh my God, what's that voice? Oh my God, it's natural. It's incredible. And he said, and he said, Mark, save me. They're all crazy. And he kept a little logbook of like really crazy things people had said to him at the Comic-Con. Even like complaining about storylines like it was his fault. And but at the end of us just chatting, and again, this is really early on where they were just promoting the very first animated Batman that Kevin worked on. And they were handing out this flyer, this promotional animation art flyer, and I said, and Debbie said, "Oh, you must have one of these." So I said, "Oh, thanks a lot." And then Kevin said, "Here, let me have that." And he wrote on it to me. He wrote, "To Mark, from one great voice to another, Kevin Conroy, Batman." And you go, "Whoa!" So that's in the treasured forever vault. Nice guy.
And I just wanted to say thank you so much for doing this interview. This was a lot of fun.
You're so welcome.
And I guess I want to say, if there's any advice you could give to people who are interested in this field, what would you say?
I'd say Absolutely do it. Learn from the best, and there's lots of courses and things you can go on. But for me, I taught myself by watching people who I thought were brilliant. Watch them, learn from the people. You're the best. You're the best judge of all of them because you're the audience. So watch the people that have inspired you, people that make you laugh, the people that impress you, whether it's the artists, the animators, the musicians, the voice actors. Watch them, learn from them, read everything you can, watch the interviews, and then do it again and again and again. Record yourself, be a really good self-critic. Listen to it back and go, what do you think of that? And you go, well, if it sucked, go, why did that suck? But what can I do to make that better? And then there's little bits that you hear that you go, that's pretty good. Figure out why it was good and how you can hold on to that to continue that. But the best way of doing this is the best way of doing anything creative is just doing it again and again, and you get better and better. I went from being somebody who was pretty quiet, that wanted to just keep their head down in the studio and for the craft of it, to make stuff, to be creative and make things in a room and play them to an audience, to being on stage at the Royal Albert Hall presenting a Star Wars symphony. The more that you do it, the more confidence you get, the better you become. And also the cost of entry to this now is so cheap compared to what it was when I started out. You can you can record on your phone. You start out just by doing stuff. If you get a chance to play and collaborate with friends and just create sketches, but just do stuff and upload things and really have a good time, and then listen to your show. Listen to the conversations that you've had. I mean, have you found talking to the talented performers that you've spoken to in this useful?
Oh, no, I'd say, because I've been doing this technically for 10 years. I've spoken to some amazing people, and a couple who have unfortunately passed away, like some very, very talented people. And I've been told so many stories and just things about the industry. And I'd say I've learned more from this than I have from a lot of things.
Yeah, because you can go on courses and be, but you know what? To a point, there's certain things that can be prescribed, but it's usually, for me, it's been listening and watching people that I admire. They go, actually, these anecdotes, and hearing about their experiences, that's where I've learned. And what happened at the very beginning, you'll need a show reel. So I'd become a good producer in audio, and I put this show reel together, which was 20 voices in 20 seconds. And instead of doing what other voice performers at the time were doing, which was mainly voice over and then a few accents at the end of their show reel, I thought, right, I'm your cartoon guy. And my show reel, you heard some very familiar, like Warner, like build up, and you heard, "Hi, I'm Marc Silk. I do cartoon voices." And then like a mallet to the skull, it was 20 voices in 20 seconds. And as I sent off 10 show reels, 10 cassettes. So 10 cassettes, hoping I'd get a 1 in 10 response. I got 13 responses. Got 13 responses back.
Wow.
The cassette viral. And the key to it was entertaining. Because I thought, in the end, the people that you want to work with, the people auditioning you, those people, they're just like us. And the best response I got was from Cartoon Network. And I still have the letter, and the essence of it was, "Thank you for reaching out to us. We've never heard of you. We have no need for you. We have to meet you."